Hi, this is Michael Wan, News Director for Radio Korea.
And welcome to Culture Shock. I am Young Kim, the Contents Director for the team.
Yeah, and we have a very special guest. We go way back. It's Jeffrey Prang, LA County Assessor.
That's right.
Yes.
LA County Assessor.
You guys go way back, huh?
We
Obviously,
go,
like
how many years have we known each other?
Probably about a decade. I think.
Almost like a
Decade?
decade. Yeah. When you first, I think when you were first running
I
for
was
the
first
office.
running for the office back in 2013 is when I got started.
Because LA County office was always on the news for all the wrong reasons back then. Remember that?
Yeah, well, my predecessor, for those who weren't paying attention, my predecessor spent time in jail for corruption and bribery. Although he's still awaiting trial. He's still not
I can't
trial
believe it.
10
How
years
many?
later,
I mean, isn't that 10 years ago?
It's
How
11
can
years.
it still be going on? The case is still going on after 10 years.
they didn't even get into a courtroom until last fall. And it's still what's called the preliminary hearing. So it's not even the trial. This is just the first test to determine whether trial is indicated, 11 years after the allegations of wrongdoing first took place.
And that took 10 years.
Took 10 years, yeah.
And it's not even finished yet.
He vacated the office in May of 2012 on a leave of absence. He was arrested in September, spent 5 months in jail, and he's been out on bail since, I think, February of 2013.
Mm-hmm. And Jeffrey, you came in, I mean, you were one of the candidates, and your election pledge was you were going to clean house.
I came in as a reformer. I had been a city council member and mayor for the city of West Hollywood. I had experience working in the assessor's office. I'd been a city administrator. And I was elected in 2014 in a field of 12 candidates. And we came in to set things right. And I think we've done a really good job of doing that.
So you went from West Hollywood to the entire county.
Yeah, that's quite a big jump.
Yeah,
So,
you were telling us about the county. I mean, you were doing the county. It's like it's a pretty big deal.
LA County is the most populous county in the United States. About 10 million residents over about 4,700 square miles. Mm-hmm. My office, as assessor, is the largest office of its type in the United States. And just to give you for your viewers and listeners, the snapshot, the LA County Assessor is responsible for establishing the value of all taxable property of the county. That includes real property, which is land and buildings, also what they call business property, which is furniture, equipment, and machinery. So we're basically appraisers, and we determine the value. And in LA County, there's about 2.5 million pieces of property that we value. The total assessed value of all that property is close to $2 trillion. And from that, we generate $19 billion in property taxes, which goes to schools, cities, and it pays for police, hospitals, libraries, parks, roads, etc.
I'm glad you actually brought that up because I was I wanted to ask,
Well,
what does an
ask?
assessor do? I mean, so that's what you do.
Yes.
That's what,
Uh-huh.
and I have to say, importantly, what I don't do. I don't collect taxes.
Yep.
Everybody thinks I do that, but the guy who collects taxes, he's got a really intuitive title. He's called the tax collector. Mm-hmm. Easy way to differentiate.
So you just assess it and then you appraise it basically.
That's right. We determine that when you buy property, we get a copy of the deed and we then determine the value. And then the tax collector is the one who sends you your bills and collects the money. But I don't have anything to do specifically with revenue, although revenue is the byproduct of what I do. But you want the guy appraising your property to be fair and accurate and not be thinking about revenue.
Yeah.
So our job is to put the right value on your property, whether it goes up or down, irrespective of revenue.
Okay, is there a different appraisal system that the county goes by as opposed to the market, or is it generally similar to the market?
It is. Well, the way that we do appraisal in California is standardized statewide under the California Constitution, a measure that you may recall called Proposition 13. So there's 58 counties, all 58 assessors do our job the same way. We have some oversight by the state through the Board of Equalization. And the way it works is when you buy property, we assess your property's market value. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that's what you pay for it, sometimes it's not. But once we determine the market value, let's say you bought a house for $1 million, your assessed value for that home is now $1 million. Mm-hmm. And you'll pay taxes, which is 1%.
1%.
So you're going to pay $10,000 on $1 million home, and then we're done for as long as you own the home. What'll happen next is you'll get a maximum of a 2% annual cost of living adjustment. Sometimes it's less. And the only other time we would look at your property is if you add something that wasn't there before.
You have to work a lot with the Board of Equalization. So did you work a lot with Michelle Steele, the current congresswoman who used to be there, and also Judy Chu? No, not Judy. With Judy Chu, right?
Well, I know Judy Chu when she was on the Board of Equalization. I helped her during that campaign. Michelle Steele was already off the board.
Was already off.
The Board of Equalization does two things. One, they work with all the assessors to ensure that we have standardized regulations so that the way we're assessing your property in LA County is the same way they're doing it in Stanislaus County. Mm-hmm. They also audit assessors for make sure that we are doing our job properly. And I have to say that last year, the Board of Equalization audited my department and gave me a 99% grade.
Did they? Wow.
So we were pretty.
So
we were pretty.
So
happy.
are you saying that you did a 180 from John Nogues?
Yeah, we didn't do as well in those days.
Yeah, John Nogues, didn't he lower the property tax for his donors and stuff? Right?
I don't. Well, that's what he's accused of doing. He's accused of having a relationship with donors who had inappropriate access and were pushing him to adjust their values. Whether that happened or not, I don't know. The courts will determine. They're also charging him with bribery. He got a very what he called a very large loan from a property tax agent who lobbied the department, loaned him about $200,000.
Was it like a loan?
He called it a loan. He produced a loan document, but he didn't make any payments on that loan, and it was for almost $200,000. So anybody,
That's a big amount,
a lot of people in the public here in California don't understand what the rules are with elected officials and gifts, and the rules are pretty strict. You just can't take any. If somebody buys you lunch, you got to fill out reports. There's nothing that allows you to take loans from $200,000 from people who do business with your office, and even if the law would allow it, which I don't know that it does, you still shouldn't do it. So that's problematic.
But there must be people who try to cheat like that.
Yeah,
right? I mean,
there are. We saw what happened in the city of LA with the council member from the east side, Jose Huizar, who was took hundreds of thousands of dollars from developers. He clearly wasn't going to report that on his financial disclosure reports because he was.
I mean, what was going on? Well, to be honest, I think what's going on in the county and the city side, I think seems like there was a lot of corruption. I think you cleaned house, you reformed the county assessor's office. But if you look at the city council side, 3 of the councilmen, former and current, got indicted and convicted.
Yeah, that Mitch Englander from the Valley, he went to jail for bribery. Jose Huizar, I think he's pleaded guilty, has he not?
I agree. I understand that he pleaded guilty.
This kind of thing is kind of common these days.
It's the city of Los Angeles has had a really difficult time the last couple of years with convictions and allegations of corruption, and it's really, I think it's really shaken the faith of a lot of the public in the city of LA, and I think you saw that in last year's elections in LA when people who were office holders were defeated for re-election. One was running for another city office and lost rather handily to an outsider. So I think the public were expressing their dissatisfaction with the city of LA. John Nogues was 10 years ago, but I don't think the county of Los Angeles is having the same.
Yeah, but actually, Mark Ridley Thomas did all those corruption when he was county supervisor. Right. So that was on the county side more than the city side, right?
Yeah, I believe that those allegations were related to his time at the county.
Yeah.
But I will say that I have I've been in the county now since 2014, and I have a lot of confidence in the leadership and the ethical standards that this Board of Supervisors and the sheriff and the district attorney apply.
Yeah. And one thing about LA County Assessor is there is no term limit, right? I mean, there is no
term limits.
So
as long as you're doing a good job, you just
as long as you're doing a good job.
Is it every 4 years or every 3 years?
4 years. So I was reelected last June.
Yeah.
So I don't have to stand before the voters again until 2026.
So what I've been hearing is that you want to be county assessor for the rest of your life.
I don't know that I want to do anything for the rest of my life other than be alive. But I like what I'm doing for the time being, and I'll do it as long as I think I'm being productive and enjoying the job. And
you think County of LA, City of LA is going in the right direction? You know, many people have been very worried about what's going on, the looting, crime rate going up, police LAPD force dropping from the 10,000 back in Antonio Villaraigosa days to all the way down to 9,100, barely.
And no one wants to be a cop right now.
Well, as I mentioned, I was on the city council in West Hollywood for 18 years, whereas also the mayor for 4 terms, and that city provided and continues to provide very high levels of service. It's safe, it's clean, the infrastructure is well maintained. You can get really great response from City Hall. I now live in the city of Los Angeles, and City of LA's level of services are significantly less.
Oh, you see the difference.
Well, there's one of the. If I could offer a criticism of the city council in general, is I think it seems to be that too often they're focused on the big picture issues in City Hall, which are very important. I'm not trying to say that those issues are not important, but I think they do it to the exclusion of the day-to-day issues that a lot of us experience just in our lives. Whether it be the condition of the roads are bad, particularly now after all the rain. Parkways areas are not maintained. People dump things in parkway areas and alleys, and there's graffiti, and a lot of that just lingers for a very, very long time. The quality of life issues that make you feel good about your neighborhood, about your community, or they have an impact. One of the pet peeves I have with the city of LA is that is traffic. And we have a lot of traffic, but I was a city council member long enough to know that they can deal with traffic signals and synchronize them to keep traffic flowing during peak hours. But north-south streets in LA, it's as though they got together and said, let's make sure that you can never get past a traffic light driving north and south on La Brea or Crenshaw. And during rush hour, it makes already bad traffic just absolute standstill.
So the city planner does that, right?
There's the streets department or Department of Transportation, I think, is responsible.
Who files complaint to them about these issues?
I don't know.
Citizens, constituents, because most constituents, they don't know where to complain about all this kind of stuff.
Well, it's a little bit more difficult in the city of LA. So city council offices, in many ways, are sometimes the principal point of contact for city services. But if you have council members who are not paying attention to those details, those details may not be attended to. You could also call the Bureau of Street Services or Department of Transportation, whoever's in charge, and report those things. And they do take public service, and I don't know how they deal with it, but LA's super huge, and sometimes complaints take a very, very long time to respond to. But I think, for my money, LA has not been as attentive to those issues. On top of that, we have the big issues, which you already referenced. The crime surge, which really happened, interestingly enough, at the beginning of COVID. After 25 years of declining crime rates across the country, they started going up. Although I think I just saw some recent reports that show that they're starting to go back down again.
Oh, really?
Still a little bit above where they were at COVID, but a lot of Part 1 crimes are starting to go down. But the homeless issue, even though we've spent a gazillion dollars on homeless, we passed a couple of big measures, and it doesn't feel, to the average person, it doesn't feel like things are getting any better.
Triple H is a failure, right?
I don't know if I'd call it a failure, but Triple H was supposed to provide a great deal of housing, and I don't know how much they've built, but it hasn't demonstrated, at least to those driving around, they haven't felt like there's any difference before.
I don't see any difference.
Is it that, I mean, they don't want to go to these homes, or is that what's going on? Or
well, the homeless population is extraordinarily complex.
Yeah.
There are
70,000. Is it 70,000 now?
Somewhere between 50 and 70,000, right? I believe. I don't know the exact number, but there's people out there who are severely mentally ill, and they are what they call service resistant. That they're so far gone they don't want that type of service. There are people who have severe drug problems, who are just in a daze all day long, and have a hard time even maintaining a home if they get one. And then you have the people who are just impacted economically. They didn't make very much money. They were living hand to mouth. They lost their job, and suddenly they lost their apartment. They're living in their cars, and just can't get back on their feet financially. And then there's a whole lot of different conditions in between. So sometimes you have somebody who's homeless and they find a place for you to live, but it's not in the same area where you've been homeless, and they don't want to go there because the people, the things they know are in one area.
So I get the impression that the county and the city side, they're focusing too much on homelessness. A lot of money is being spent there. We don't see a lot of improvement. But like you said, at the expense of that, we're losing all other issues. We don't even think about it. They don't even talk about it that much.
Well, the one thing I felt and experienced during this last campaign for mayor and city council in LA is that was the one issue everybody wanted to hear an answer about. People are very frustrated and angry and unhappy with where the city and the county have been on homeless issues for several years. And even though we've invested more money, it doesn't seem to be getting better. So I do believe that the mayor, Karen Bass, is appropriately focusing her attention in the beginning of her term to say we're gonna move the needle on homelessness. And I think thus far, they're not. It's not like a light switch. They can't turn it on and off. It's going to be a slow process.
I think it's gotten better a little bit.
They've gotten a lot of people into housing. There is some objection by homeless service advocates about that people are being moved out of their neighborhoods. But her job, her program is inside safe. Get people inside, and it may not be ideal. But I think the homeless issue is so bad that the answer may not be ideal. But we need to get people into homes in a place where it's safe, where we can get them services and food and medicine. And I think she's making some very affirmative steps. It's too early to judge, but I'm optimistic at the moment.
Well, I would imagine the city or the county has some kind of a priority list or something, because I've noticed that, or I've heard through studies and statistics that homelessness, once the people that are like in tents or out on the streets, right. I mean, they've been homeless for a while already, because generally like they're moving from their friend's home, or they're mooching off of someone else or something, like I would do, and then later on what happens is they live out of their cars, and then they run out of that, and then they hit the streets. So by the time you see someone on the street, I hear that they've already been homeless for a good 2-3 years.
So again, the homeless population, there's an enormous of diversity in the experiences as how they got where they are, what's keeping them there. I always, it's a great oversimplification, but those three different buckets that I mentioned, the economic homeless, the substance abuse homeless, and then the mentally ill homeless. The mentally ill are probably the most difficult. They may be the most resistant to service. They might be the most likely to not want to stay in a controlled environment. And actually, when you think about the homeless people that oftentimes are the most difficult for people to understand or to be sympathetic to, it is those, because they may feel threatening because they're mentally ill, and
the majority of them are drug addicts.
So substance abuse is. I don't know if I would. I don't know the statistic. I can't. Maybe it's the majority.
I don't think you can say majority.
Are there some statistics about it?
Substance abuse is significant in the homeless population. It's even, and when you are mentally ill and addicted to drugs, it's even worse.
Like fentanyl, methamphetamine.
Well, methamphetamine and fentanyl and heroin seem to be some of the most pervasive drugs.
They have a trank or something.
So I was talking with John Lee. I know that he's
a trank or something.
It's a more common, a more recent one, but these are really powerful and damaging drugs.
Have you seen those guys? Some of those guys,
they're like zombies. They're like zombies.
There is a relatively new California program in the last year or two. I can't remember the acronym for it, but it basically gives the state more authority to determine somebody is unfit to make decisions for themselves, and they can compel them to be put into treatment. And that's very controversial.
We can force them.
Yes.
If they can't, if they judge that they can't make decisions for themselves.
It gives the state more authority over conservatorship to say you can't take care of yourself, so we can compel you to go into treatment. And that's very controversial, particularly with the civil libertarian groups who believe it's too much state power over one person. I disagree with them on this one. I think my view is if you're so mentally ill that you can't make decisions about your own well-being and your health, then you shouldn't be emancipated. We would not allow a 7-year-old child to live on their own, if you could be 50 years old and so severely mentally ill that you cannot make good decisions, and you just have to walk out the streets of LA and see people where their limbs are rotting off because they don't know.
Yeah.
I saw one today, actually.
And is that humanity? Is that really respecting their civil rights by allowing them to die on the streets? If we can move them into a humane environment, provide them medical treatment and food and shelter. I know that it can be very difficult trying to keep people confined to make sure we're not violating their civil liberties, but we're not doing anybody any favors keeping people who are severely mentally ill and unfit to make their own decisions on the street. I don't think that's humane.
Yeah, and there are also people who are addicted to drugs, and they would rather do drugs than get well or seek treatment for whatever they're going through.
When you're high on drugs and that's your priority. Where you're at, and you don't want people getting in your business, and if you have to live in a tent or under a viaduct in order to do that, that's what you're going to do.
Yeah, we had Los Angeles City Councilman John Lee a couple of weeks ago, and what he said was, pretty much homelessness issue is a drug issue now. That's how he sees it. I don't know whether he was being a little bit hardliner on that one, but that's the impression I get too.
So I have
the fentanyl.
Even though I sit on the board of a homeless
border
organization called People Assisting the Homeless, I cannot represent myself as an expert on homeless issues. I've been in public policy a long time, so I've had a lot of interaction with homeless services. I can't speak to the specifics and all of all those details. But yes, drugs are a huge problem in the homeless.
And I think there's areas too, like Skid Row, for example, that seems to be the epicenter of like the drugs, and everyone wants drugs over there, and they seem to be addicted over there. But I've seen a lot of homeless people who are actually trying to get by. And
one of the challenges in Skid Row is that there's a huge collection of service agencies, from Midnight Mission to Union Rescue, where they provide shelter, food, and housing. And there's a lot of them collected in a small area. There's also a lot of single resident occupancy hotels for affordable housing. So it collects a large number of homeless people in that area. The city of Santa Monica provides some services, and where you provide services, you're going to get a larger part of the population. So in some ways, the city of LA unfairly has a bigger burden of homeless because they're doing the most to help people by allowing those services to reside within their cities. But you don't see homeless shelters in the more wealthy cities. So if you're homeless, you're going to go where you can get food, shelter, and other services.
You're an LA County assessor, so I think you probably have this data. Do you think a lot of people are moving out of here, business-wise and even just population-wise?
Well, the statistics do demonstrate that the population
that, right?
is the LA City and LA County both lost a small population. California has lost a small population. Yeah, I don't know that it's statistically significant, but it is understandable because housing prices in California are through the roof. It's probably the most expensive in the nation. It's harder and harder to live here for people who are not of means. Traffic is bad because we're heavily populated.
Gas is expensive.
Gas is more expensive here, and so the cost of living will drive a lot of when you look at home prices in the rural South, and you could what you could buy a house in South LA here, probably in Mississippi, you could buy a mansion. And so a lot of people are saying, let's go to a place where there's less traffic and where our money goes further. So I don't believe that's a condemnation of California. I think that's saying we could get more somewhere else.
And then there's people like me who are a small business owner, and the rising crime rates. I mean, I don't know if it's rising or not, but I've already had my car broken into like several times. It's not really big crimes, but still, the small little petty crimes like catalytic converters. Someone took my tailgate. It
interrupts your life.
Yeah, it sure does.
I mean, quality of life is going down because of those.
If crime affects you, it's a problem. Nobody wants to be the victim of a crime. And I moved to LA in 1987, and crime was at a peak.
That's true.
And wherever we're at today, crime is a whole lot less than it was.
Do you think 80s were worse?
The 80s and the early 90s were worse. I've never really heard a good explanation as to why, but starting in the early to mid 1990s, crime began to go down rather precipitously, and not just in LA, but across the country. And I remember at that time you'd hear police chiefs and mayors of cities saying, "Under my administration, we brought down crime," but crime was going down everywhere. So there was something going on across this country that was causing crime to go down. And even though crime is up in LA, it's up everywhere. So it's not like we're doing something unique or special in LA. Across the country during COVID, crime numbers went up.
Isn't it mainly though metropolitan cities, like big cities like LA and New York and Chicago, Atlanta?
But of course, these are population centers. We're very densely populated. One of the interesting statistics I have seen lately is they talk about crime in LA and San Francisco, and say it's the big city, coastal cities that have all the crime, or New York. But Columbus, Ohio has a higher crime rate than New York City, but it has a lot fewer people. So the number of crimes is a lot less, but as a percentage of the population, it's higher. So our numbers are higher, but when you compare them to other smaller cities, the numbers may be comparable, in some cases even less.
Well, I mean, so you've been in LA for a while. I mean, you've seen like the crime rate in LA, and it did get better. Is there anything that points towards maybe lax laws that may be letting criminals off a little bit too much? Maybe
we're talking about the recent $950. If you steal less than that, you get scot-free.
I've heard a lot of that. I have not seen nor read anything that would seem to indicate a direct correlation between some of those policies and the increase in crime. In particular, since these new laws have just taken place in the last year or two, and again, crime rates are not like on a light switch. You change a law, suddenly crime doesn't go up. It takes a while for these things to seep into the community to determine whether they're going to work or not. Mm-hmm. I certainly understand some of the fears that people have about changing some of the laws, but there has been a movement to keep lower level offenders out of jail and to provide other levels of rehabilitative services. Although I do believe one of the big failings we have in California is I'm sympathetic to that concept, but if the answer is to have rehabilitative services, then you have to have them, and I don't think we have them at the level that we need them.
Did you endorse a specific candidate for the last election cycle for the LA County DA?
I supported my colleague who was Jackie Lacey at the time.
Jackie Lacey. So I think she would have been better, to be honest with you. I had lots of talk with actually Jackie, and she's very worried about the county right now.
I think the response time. When criminals know that it's going to take a certain amount of time for cops to come to the location, I mean, don't you think that would embolden them a little bit? I mean,
I would, to answer that question, I would have to speculate. I mean, in that context, it could make sense, but I don't know.
But you saw what happened.
I don't know how smart or informed criminals are. I mean, I guess if you live in an area and you know that if you call the cops, they don't come for 30 minutes, then that becomes part of your way of doing business. And yeah, I think that might be impactful. I don't know that response times are less or better now before these laws, but
I think it's the lack of forces. I think lack of policemen.
Uh-huh. Did you see that Compton video, the gas station video, where you see these hundreds of kids going in and stealing condoms?
Yeah, Compton's been really impacted by what they call street takeovers, where a bunch of people, I don't get this, I guess I'm an old curmudgeon, but a bunch of people get in their cars and they do big wheelies around in intersections, and hundreds of people stand around and watch them. Really dangerous, because sometimes these cars go into the crowd, people get injured.
Yeah, these street
but
takeovers.
Then suddenly this one street takeover, with dozens of people just invaded a convenience store and just stole everything, and it's very, very alarming. It was kind of alarming to know that all those people could gather and that much of an impact could happen, and there was no There's no law enforcement present.
Wait, so technically, if none of them stole anything over $800, they would.
Yeah, they're not charged.
They wouldn't be
they're
charged.
Not charged.
I mean, they would be charged with a misdemeanor.
Misdemeanor, but I think they pretty much are let go. So I wanted to ask you that. Do you see a lot of businesses leaving too? Because you know, the tax wise, I think you would have the data about it.
I actually don't.
You don't
have
about
that,
the business.
have that data. I don't know that I have enough information to.
So you assess you appraise like the real estate and everything, right?
We establish the value of property. So anytime that change hands, if you're a business leaving, but you rented, we wouldn't know that you're leaving.
Has these assessments have the average price has it gone down a little bit? In your expertise.
A couple answers to that. One, during COVID, residential home prices went through the roof.
Yeah.
1 year, 20%. That's an incredible return on your investment. But that had a lot to do with very low mortgage rates and a lack of inventory because people weren't selling it. So people were really bidding up home values. So property values across the county, residential property values skyrocketed during COVID. They're starting to come down now. It's more of a correction, but they're still a bit ahead of where they were before COVID. We thought there was going to be a really negative impact on the commercial real estate. When everybody went into lockdown and all these businesses sent their people home to telework, we started asking ourselves, well, are all these like downtown corporate offices who are going to have some experience having their employees telework, when the telework is done, are they going to say, hey, let's save some money on office space and just keep them at home? So we thought that commercial property would lose value because there's going to be a lot of vacancies. But that didn't really happen. Most employees started coming back. They've incorporated telework, but they're not getting rid of their office space at the numbers that we expected.
Okay. So after the break, we'll talk about death tax.
That's right. We're with the County of Los Angeles Assessor Jeffrey Prang, and we'll be back with more on Culture Shock.
부주의 운전, 지구를 위협합니다.
오늘도 지각 예정인 회사원 A씨 차 안으로 뛰쳐들어갑니다. 늦었으니까 일단 시동부터 걸고 출발할게요. 이제부터 업무를 시작해볼까요? 바쁜 현대인은 달리는 차 안에서 여러 가지 일을 할 수 있어요. 일단 예의 바르게 5분 늦는다고 문자를 상사에게 보냅니다. 내비게이션에 주소를 찍을게요. 아침도 챙겨 먹고 인스타도 좀 확인하고 유튜브도 보고 전화도 걸고 전화를 받고 밥을 먹으니 졸음이 와요. 잠깐 낮잠을 즐겨볼게요. 에그머니나 쿵 소리와 함께 천사들이 보여요. 내가 꿈을 꾸는 건가요?
부주의한 운전은 교통사고를 일으키는 주요 원인 중 하나입니다. 운전을 할 때는 도로 위 상황에 집중해 주세요. 우리 모두가 함께 안전한 도로 환경을 만들어 나가는 것이 필요합니다. 이 광고는 라디오 코리아와 함께합니다.
And welcome back to Culture Shock.
Yeah, we're back with LA County Assessor Jeffrey Prang, my old pal. Right?
Good to be with you.
He was my partner in crime back in the old days, and we.
How did you guys meet? How are you guys partners in crime? Was that when you were mayor, or?
I believe
No.
it was when I was running for assessor.
Yeah.
I think I reached out to Michael, who was writing for the Korean Daily.
The Korea Daily. Okay.
Yeah, and when I had an English show, and we pretty much it was a debate format, and I would always invite mostly people who have like an opposite point of view. So
really?
he and I had a lot of battles, actually.
Oh, so that's how you guys got close,
But he invited me. I was on that show almost weekly for a while.
Yes.
See, I wish politics would work like this too, because people have opposing views, but you could battle it out, but in the end, you still respect each other.
We had an exchange of ideas. I told Michael he's entitled to his stupid opinions.
Yeah, but more about national issues, but on the state and the local side, I think I do agree with him a lot. Actually, it's different, right?
We know that he can't be all bad because he likes me.
Yeah. So we're really happy that you're here to inform our audience about tax issues, and especially we're specifically gonna go into death tax.
Yeah.
So you want to repeal the death tax, right?
So there is a new tax. Well, it's not a new tax. A new tax methodology in California. So in 2020, voters approved something called Proposition 19. And it was sold to the public as a tax benefit for senior citizens or for disabled people or for those who were victims of natural disasters.
This
like
was last
floods
year,
or fires. 2020.
Yeah, 2020.
And so what it basically said is if you're a senior and you bought your home in 1990 for $100,000 and you're paying taxes based on $100,000, you could move to a new house anywhere in California and you could take that tax base with you without being reassessed. So it keeps your taxes stable. It makes your tax base portable. It's a great benefit, great savings for seniors, and it was very popular. The California Associations of Realtors wanted to do that. Their concern was that seniors were staying put in homes that were too big for them because they didn't want to move because they didn't want the tax increase. Because in California, we only reassess your property when you sell it. So they wanted seniors to move. So they said, let's make it easy for seniors to move by letting them transfer their tax base. So everybody likes that. Great idea. It's a great tax benefit. But it was going to have a profoundly negative impact on local government revenue, which is primarily property taxes. So they came up with a way to pay for that. And this is where I objected to it. I think they were kind of sneaky, and I think they were disingenuous. California previously had inheritance benefits that were very beneficial for families, keeping the cherished family home in the family. But what they did to pay for these senior citizen benefits is they eviscerated family inheritance benefits. So now you want to give your home to your kids, or in some cases your grandkids, the chances are in LA County that they're going to they'll inherit the home, but they could be stuck with a big tax bill. Or if they inherit the home but are not able to live in it, they can keep it, but then we're going to assess it to market rate, and the taxes may force them to sell it.
Yeah.
So it puts families who may only have very modest real estate holdings into a very difficult position. Particularly a lot of minority communities, African American, Latino, where they may be only one or two generations removed from poverty. And oftentimes it is your home that provides that economic base to help provide some generational wealth to your kids and your grandkids. And they're saying, so this measure passes. They never talked about the inheritance portion of it. They only talked about the transfer of your base year.
Like most propositions.
So this is one of the objections. We shouldn't be doing complex property tax administration at the ballot. Even people who understand it don't understand it. But we're asking rank and file lay people, voters, to understand this. So it passed very narrowly. And then suddenly everybody who was planning to give their property to their kids said, wait a second, that's not what I wanted. I voted for seniors. I didn't vote to take that away from my kids and grandkids. It was funny because at that point, the measure went into effect about 2 months after it passed. And we had thousands upon thousands of people transferring their property to their children before that law went into effect to help them avoid the taxes.
Wow.
So what SCA 4, Senate Constitutional Amendment 4, does is it will repeal that part of Prop 19 dealing with inheritance and return it to the way it was prior to Proposition 19.
So are you saying that the constituents when they passed the bill, similar, they didn't understand it well?
I don't think they did. No, it was not part of the campaign.
I noticed they try to sneak in a few things in propositions along with it. They piggyback a few other things in there, and they don't talk about it.
And now they're reverting. They want the old style.
So part of the sales campaign in that measure was, one is they put a revenue stream for firefighters, because firefighters are the most popular public position. So if a firefighter says, I need more money for putting out fires and saving lives, people are going to be very sympathetic. So that was one of the tools they used. And then they talked about another incidence of the family of Lloyd Bridges, the actor. Jeff Bridges and Beau Bridges are his kids. Well, they bought a home in Malibu decades ago, and its assessed value was very, very low because they had owned it since the 70s.
Like $33 million.
And so when exactly, that's about what it was worth. So when Lloyd Bridges died, his sons, Jeff and Bo Bridges, didn't want to live in the house, and they rented on Airbnb for like $20,000 a month. And so I think there is rightfully some concern that it's not, inheritance benefits really aren't supposed to create some revenue windfall for you.
So it was a loophole.
So it was a bit of a loophole for the super rich. But the challenge in closing that loophole for the super rich, they also closed it for you and me and other people who for regular folks who really do need that home as something to.
Do you think they purposely did that so that they can revert back, so that the rich can get the loophole back?
I don't know that there was. They thought. What they did deliberately was they reduced inheritance benefits in order to pay for senior benefits, and then they didn't really tell people about that component of it.
So, do the voters have to vote on this?
So what happens
when it goes through the
Senate Constitutional Amendment 4 first has to get through the legislature. It has to get 2/3 vote, and then it will be placed on the ballot in 2024 if it passes.
2/3 both sides of the aisle, right?
That's correct. Both sides, both the House, the Assembly and the Senate.
And then the governor has to sign off on it, and then it's going to be voted, up for the voters.
So right now the big challenge is can we get enough votes from the legislature to put it back on the ballot?
Hopefully the voters get informed and know about all of this.
There's no doubt in my mind that if this gets on the ballot, the voters will
definitely pass it.
Will vote for it. It's can we get it through the legislature?
You think? Go ahead. You think that's going to be a hurdle?
It is a hurdle. Yeah, it's going to be tough.
Okay, it's bad for California because I think a bunch of people are going to probably leave here.
I've been appealing. The appeal I make when I speak with legislators is that I think this is fair. I said I don't mind if we want to change inheritance rules in California. I don't mind doing that. Let's have that conversation. But sneaking it into a measure by dangling a kind of a shiny object somewhere else, saying "Look over here, don't look over here," I think that's disingenuous. I think that undermines the trust that people have in government. I think people want an authentic and an honest conversation about things we are asking them to do. And I don't think we did that with this measure. And I think the public has the right to have a do-over.
Which side of the aisle do you think are going to oppose this? More of a conservative or the liberal, or just
rich people?
Right. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, I've spoken to lots. This is sponsored by a Republican, but there's lots of Democrats who represent constituents who have been negatively impacted by this. A Democratic co-author just signed on. So it will have. I think it's going to be bipartisan, but I think where it will run into some problems is because it will have a revenue impact. Because reducing,
so the Democrats would be against it, right?
So some Democrats may have an issue with that because this was the inheritance reduction was a revenue offset for the senior benefits. And so I don't know what the answer is, but that's not my job. The legislator's job is to fill those holes. My view is you need to do what's right and have honest policies adopted with eyes wide open. And the people have a right to, in my view, to have a do-over on this. If it's a revenue problem, you've got the control. Find that revenue through some other source to fill that gap.
Okay. Well, it does make sense. I mean, you mentioned like some rich people giving it to their kids, and they just Airbnb it. So it's kind of a business. They're profiting off of it now.
We could. I mean, one potential fix would be saying that homes over a certain value, let's say over $10 million, will be reassessed.
Or what you do with the home, or what if you're turning over a profit with it, then obviously that should be taxed, right?
So this is by Senator Kelly Sayado. Is that how you pronounced him? His name?
Sayado. He's from the Inland Empire, I believe. He's a former LA County firefighter.
Okay, so you have a personal rapport with him too?
I just met him. As the
because of this issue.
Just in the last couple weeks.
And what kind of talks did you have with him?
We talked about the issues behind it. I explained to him why I thought his bill was important and why I would support it, and I told him I would do what I can do to round up some legislative support from some of the legislators I know here in LA County.
Okay, Republican senator, right?
He's a Republican senator.
Okay, so you do talk with Republicans. I'm just kidding.
Wait, we mentioned streets, right? Earlier on, we were talking about how like the streets are bad and this and that. Doesn't that have sort of a direct effect on the property prices or property value of a certain area?
Of course.
So I mean, isn't it better for California and LA to fix all these things as soon as possible? I'm curious about this gas tax to fix the roads. What's going on with that?
Yeah, why
You know, I'm just
$1.08 here and all 49? I bet you saw the billboard ad, right? All 49 states on average, it's 29 cents per gallon, but $1.08.
I don't know
per
that
gallon for California.
I don't know that I can speak intelligently about
I was just wondering maybe you could
all the
offer
funding.
more
But yeah,
insight.
gas tax is collected to invest in infrastructure. Some of that money goes into highways. Some of it is given to cities to fix local streets. But yes, if you live in a neighborhood where the sidewalks are in good repair, the trees are trimmed, and the roads are all well maintained, that will enhance your property values.
Yeah, of course. I mean, good schools also.
Schools as well.
Good schools.
Good public services increase property values.
All right, okay. So on the legislature side, you think it's going to be tough on both the Assembly and the Senate side? It's not going to be an easy road
For this
for the death.
I think it's
repeal the death tax.
I think it's a bit of a struggle in both houses. Yes.
All right, okay. And actually, Jeffrey Prang, he's a political junkie. He reads a lot of books. He's very, knowledgeable about history. If you ask him, his answers just come out of his mouth. Sometimes wrong. So, what do you think is? How do you think 2024 is shaping up to be? Do you think Democrats has the edge or Republicans?
Gavin Newsom.
Do you see Biden versus Trump or Biden versus DeSantis, or what's your analysis?
I think if the Republicans nominate Donald Trump, which if I were betting man, I would bet on that again.
You think so?
As somebody don't have anyone.
As somebody who's
DeSantis.
interested in good government, I hope that they don't nominate him. But I think that they will. I think Biden, because of his age, and a lot of questions people have about it, he's a little bit weak.
Yeah.
But I think against Trump, I think he wins again.
Do you think
Biden will win against Trump?
Do you think Biden's track record is good? So you think people are doing better now compared to Trump era?
Yeah, yes, I do.
You do. Wow.
Well, here's the problem, and I've used this analogy several times. The economy is not a light switch. You can't adopt 4 policies today and then say it's going to be better next week. Trump took credit in his economy for things that the previous president did. Biden has
he deregulated. He deregulated.
I know, and it's
Trump,
a disaster.
And America was energy independent for the first time in 72 years. You don't give credit for that.
Well, that is a very, very, very long conversation, and I think that's a bit of a talking point that I don't think is accurate. What Biden did is he invested. Biden staved off a major recession by keeping people employed. More people are working now than ever. Unemployment's at an all-time low. People are struggling from inflation, and some of the money that they invested in the direct grants to families and children did feed inflation, but the alternative was mass unemployment. So people may be struggling a little bit more with the amount of money they had, but it's a whole lot better than being unemployed and having no money at all. So they invested significantly. The economy is turning around, but it takes a couple of years for things to turn around. By the time we get to 2024, things should be feeling a lot stronger if Kevin McCarthy doesn't mess things up in the House and cause us to go into default over the credit limit.
Well, I hope it's like that. I hope it will go as you say. I mean, because right now the economy isn't looking so good.
The economy is actually what doesn't feel right is the fact that inflation is making it difficult to buy things, but people are all working.
That's true.
We still have a more fundamental issue, is that this country has really shifted from a democratic republic into an oligarchy. All of our policies punish people who have modest amounts of income and reward millionaires and billionaires. We provide huge amounts of tax relief and benefits to support corporations and the wealthy at the expense of working people, and that's really made things very it's really made the economy very, very very weak and much more difficult to repair.
Compared to like the 80s, the income disparity has gotten a lot worse, right?
Yeah, that was, you could point at Ronald Reagan for having done that. He basically said, let's give the rich everything they want. Let's not tax them at all, and we'll pay for that by reducing public services.
He created 20 million jobs under Reagan.
Well,
I think the economy boomed, and didn't Silicon Valley happen under his watch? He seeded that.
It boomed briefly, but it was kind of like he juiced things. He also spent our recovery all on a credit card. He basically spent a lot of money which we didn't have, and then it came due when George Bush became president.
Compared to Carter years, I think things got really stabilized. But that's a debate for another matter. I think a lot of things went downhill since Biden took over. I think the country is in chaos. You see crime rate going all over. Like you said, not just LA, New York. I think things are horrendous. People are telling me that. I'm talking with Biden voters, hardcore, who used to be Biden hardcore supporters. They changed their mind.
Didn't increase
and
crime.
even with Ukraine situation, they think if Trump was in the office, that this would not have happened.
I think they're clearly wrong.
Do you think Russia would have happened if Trump was in office? I'm just curious.
Well, the problem was Trump is pro-Russia. This guy is he's almost treasonous.
What was he so pro-Russia about?
He wouldn't hold these guys. He's accountable. He was
no. America didn't rely upon Russia's energy, oil. Under Biden, they tripled actually the import
under
of
Biden,
gas.
we are
gasoline.
moving toward more renewable resources. He got us out of COVID. The economy, while it's queasy, it is recovering because of the investments he made in infrastructure and in people who were struggling during the worst of the economy. He has laid a really good groundwork for a broken economy that he inherited from Donald Trump, who was.
Why do you say that it was a broken economy? The unemployment rate was actually lower than Biden's.
You're
saying that Biden is doing much better than Trump years. I'm hearing that people were doing business-wise doing much better. Even business owners have been telling me that they have been severely hit. Do you know that America is actually engaging in war right now with Russia, with a special team force being there, 14 of them? You know the leaks that came out, the Pentagon leaks. I don't know whether you checked the documents there.
I'm not an expert on those.
According to that, it seems like America's actively now pretty much in war with Russia. And I don't think, to be honest, I don't think this would have happened under Trump. I think Trump was very hard on Russia. He hit them in the energy department. People say that he did Russia collusion. Russia collusion, the whole thing was fabricated. No, Robert Mueller couldn't find anything. Then why did he get scot-free?
The first thing, let's say that Robert Mueller never used the word collusion, but everything he described in his report that Trump did said he colluded.
Colluded with what?
It
wasn't there. Come on. I didn't read any of that. I read it from the first word to the last word of the paper.
You missed the substance of the report if you read the whole thing. Because the whole report talked about
Jeffrey,
his
do you know
collusions.
that the Trump-Russia collusion thing was fabricated by the Clinton campaign machine? It's all Washington Post even reported that. They spent $13 million on an operation firm named Fusion GPS. You know that. They fabricated the whole thing.
All the words coming out of your mouth I have
Jeffrey,
heard before, but your conclusions are all wrong.
I supported Barack Obama. I'm just telling you the facts.
No. You're telling me your opinion.
They fabricated the whole thing.
The facts are different.
So how about the Hunter Biden thing? Do you read
the laptop
situation? You don't think he's corrupt? You don't think Joe Biden's corrupt?
No, I don't. I think Donald Trump is corrupt. I don't believe.
How about the Bank of China situation?
I think a guy who.
Why did Hunter Biden take Air Force Two and go to China?
Money in hotels overseas, whose children were profiting off their government jobs.
Jeffrey,
I think there's a lot of corruption in the fact that he was steering all this business with his Secret Service into his hotels and his golf course. I think Donald Trump was the first president making money as president, and his children.
I think they're both the same.
No, I think Ivanka and Jared was also corrupt too. But I do think Hunter Biden was corrupt, and I think Joe Biden was corrupt when he was vice president. You know that he withheld money to Ukraine. You know about that? Do you know?
Yeah, Donald Trump did hold it.
I'm talking about.
He threatened Zelensky.
I'm talking about Joe Biden when Obama was in office.
No, I know.
So is this the type of arguments that you guys like?
Yeah, this is the old show we used to do.
I wanted to make him feel a little bit at home. So, but yeah.
So what do you? Michael does what I call the whatabouts, because I'll answer something. So, well, what about this one?
Yeah,
but-
he's like a little machine gun. Just keeps on going.
No. But Joe Biden, I think, as a personal story, I think it's a triumph. That he overcame his personal tragedy and all that. And I think his heyday was supposedly back in the 80s when he first ran for presidency. But I think he's way past his prime. That's what I think. I think he doesn't have it up here. He's shaking hands with thin air. I don't think he forms a correct sentence. I think he's off. I think he's completely off. I think people are
he
telling
has
me.
degraded a little bit. I think.
I think I worry about his age.
I think he's
Trump seems to be much more
mentally
jumpy.
fine, but he's an 80-year-old man, so he's showing symptoms of an 80-year-old man. I don't know that having somebody at that age is ideal. But I think his administration has been relatively successful. I don't like everything that he's done, but I think we're on the right course. And I think having somebody who's operated conventionally and knows how to operate government is better than the utter chaos and drama that we had for 4 years under Donald Trump, or what the Republicans are.
Are you worried about rise of China? China now brokering a peace deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia.
I'm very concerned about China, because China, unlike really the only other great power in the world today, other than the United States, is China. The United States generally and historically applied certain values to our international policies, sometimes good, sometimes bad. China doesn't have any values. They want more oil, they want more allies, they want more influence, and if they have to deal with a country that slaughters its people, they're fine with that. The United States will sometimes inject its humanitarian values and how we deal with some countries, and so China has a bit of advantage because their self-interest is all that motivates them.
Do you think Gavin Newsom's gonna he has a possible pathway to with the White House?
Yeah, I've been hearing his name.
He keeps saying no, but I think Gavin Newsom is an ambitious politician. I think he is paying very close attention to see if there is an opportunity that will allow him. He's not going to take on Biden. He's not going to be, I don't think he'll do anything that would be considered to be disloyal or overly opportunistic. But
He's a party guy, right?
He has been, and he's like, I mean, both parties are the same way. They tend to be loyal to the team. I don't think he'll do anything to damage the team. But sometimes, anything can happen in politics very, very quickly. There could be a window.
So you think it's going to be Trump versus Biden, and Biden's going to win again, right? That's how you see it at this point.
I don't know. Well, the one thing that seems very clear is that Trump's standing is diminishing. His base isn't expanding, and even amongst people who supported him in the past enthusiastically, they may not oppose him, but they're not publicly standing by him. I think his base is shrinking.
Yeah.
So it's in that context, it is possible that somebody else can come out of left field and beat him.
Like Ron DeSantis, right?
Ron DeSantis' numbers have tanked in the last several weeks.
Wow,
whatever it is he's doing, to try to capture Trump's base doesn't seem to be working, and then there seems to be a media feeding frenzy because apparently Ron DeSantis isn't a particularly nice person, and they're just drilling down on his unpleasantness, which is impacting his reputation.
I think the indictment kind of helped Trump ever since the indictment. Before the indictment, I think Ron DeSantis had the edge.
The indictment
that's what
that kind of changed the game.
So the thing about Trump's base, when he's under attack, they close circles and they stand by him. I don't see. The one thing in politics is that you learn is that things can change in 24 hours. So you just don't know.
That's true.
But a snapshot today, I don't see a pathway for any of these other people running in the Republican primary to overcome Trump. It could happen because there's a lot of time between now and the nomination. But I would say that if I were betting today, I'd bet on Trump.
And then Biden winning for the second term at 82 years old.
As long as Biden continues along the pathway he is right now, I think he'll be fine. If he suddenly shows sudden and drastic lack of capacity, things could change.
Well, I just wish he would like take some more questions from the reporters.
Yeah,
too.
why? How come he doesn't take any press conference?
We'll leave that for another time. But
anyway.
anyhow, it was really great having you. We're unfortunately out of time.
Yeah, Jeffrey, we are very happy to have you here, and you know, and this is very important about the death tax situation because I didn't know about it, and I think people should because a lot of people have been thinking about moving out of the state.
To talk about
It was really nice meeting you.
Good to meet
and
you as
we
well.
hope to have you on again.
Absolutely.
Thank
you for coming back. Thank you.
Thanks.
And that was our culture shock for today. Let us know what you think on our replies, and we'll see you back here again on Monday.
Thank you very much.